United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have agendas here to have, they made it around, you can pass them that way. Terry, did you have one? No. Yes, okay, we have a couple for you guys. Yeah, I know. Thanks for that.
Wait, are they all the same?
Yes.
These are from the last meeting, so I turned them upside down. So we have the approval of the agenda. Could I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Motion to approve.
All right, support. Thank you. Okay, now I have a pen in my pocket. Did I take it out? Okay, here with me. Oh, I thought I had my pen handy. There it is. A long day. I just came back from a doctor's appointment on the west side with my husband. Got it here by the skin of my teeth. So moving on to information and discussion, we have the 3.1 is the K-12 social studies update. I'll turn that over to, let's introduce everybody, sorry. Especially because we have some change in personnel. So we'll start on that side and go around.
I'm Keith Howell, the Director of Teaching and Learning.
I'm Valarie St. John, I'm a board trustee.
Sara Belvedere, Terrence.
Christine Harris, community member. Marianne Modlin, retiree community member.
Jeanne Failla, retired. Former sub, former teacher, former parent, grandparent, community member.
A lot of buckets you fill. Lisa Pappas, Chair and Board Trustee.
Jeanne Poleski, a community member and former parent. My kids all graduated from South.
Terry Collins, board treasurer, community member, parent and grandparent of students in the district.
And before we finish up the introductions, I wanted to just welcome everybody back to curriculum and the new year. We have had just a slight couple personnel changes, and one of them being that Marcus Ambrosi is now going to be doing the Community Engagement Committee, and we swapped two people, and Mary Jane Failla, who worked for the district for many years as a teacher and has children, grandchildren in the district. They swapped places, so curriculum seemed to fit her expertise and background as an educator, so we just swapped two people, and I know Glenn Hippel has moved on to other pastures, so he's here watching it. So that's the only changes, everybody else is the same, and moving forward from that, now we will get to the K-12 social studies update, and I'll turn that over to Howell.
So we are in phase 1/2 of the review process for social studies at this time. We're looking to move for an approval of new curriculum that will move forward probably in 25 school years. So this is just a mid-year update of where the 3 levels are right now and the work that we've been doing. So our focus is always our goal. Our Educational Programs Leadership Council focuses on our goal of cultivating a robust and equitable education community where all learners are empowered to reach their unique potential. Our objective is to provide all students with a rigorous and relevant curriculum that is aligned from pre-K through graduation. So we focus on this as our focus before every meeting. We talk about it, we talk about our strategic plan, and we talk about some of the items within our plan that relate specifically with the content that we're reviewing. So social studies aligns really nicely with these bullets right here. Its learners are empowered to reach their full potential. The learning opportunities that allow students to acquire the attitudes, values, knowledge, and skills to prepare them to be contributing members to society and the world. To nurture connections among schools, families, and community, broaden opportunities for student learning and growth, providing ongoing opportunities for student choice and voice, and then also create learning environments where students will be able to identify and see themselves within the curriculum and instruction. So these are some of the bullets within our strategic plan that aligns nicely with curriculum review process. So phase 1 and 2 is where we're at right now. We're kind of shifting more into that phase 2 space. But what the committee realized, kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, is to before we really dive into our curriculum, make adjustments to the curriculum, we need to know what best practice is. We need to really develop what our goal is, and it's to develop a comprehensive social studies curriculum that's aligned to standards, that has a level of teacher usability, that has student responsiveness, it's aligned to research and aligned to standards. So we always kind of focus when we're doing a review, when we're looking at curriculum, to have these things in mind. But before we got started, the committee was really focused on professional learning. They wanted to learn more about the standards, more about what shifts have been taking place in the area of social studies. They wanted to learn more about disciplinary literacy and how it integrates in with the social studies curriculum at all levels. So we spent some time over the past year and a half really training our committee and training our teachers. We've consulted with John Ferris and Sean McBrady. John works as a social studies consultant at Wayne Risa, and then Sean Brady is actually at the MISD. He is also a parent in our community and district, so he's deeply committed to the work, and he's been spectacular in supporting the learning of all of our teachers at this point. So he's been great, and so is John. John took on this role last year. Those of you that are in education might have heard of the name David Hallis. He is recently retired. He was a long-standing social studies consultant over at Wayne Risa, and they've been supporting us through this work. So we started the work with setting the purpose. What is social studies and why is it important? Really getting an understanding K-12 so we can align. We've looked at our individual ideas. We took a look at some concept formation activities to kind of really dive into what we believed is necessary for good social studies instruction. And then we synthesized that understanding together as a K-12 group. We came up with this big long list of some of our committee ideas of what and why we feel that social studies is important, so we could start kind of linking this information directly to some of the review process and the training that we're having. So through that, we realized that our teachers needed a little bit more knowledge around the C3 framework. I'm going to talk a little bit about C3 in a second, but we talked about what is the C3 framework, wanting an understanding of it, why do we need it, what's the research that supports that, what is the arc of inquiry, starting our lessons through an inquisitive mindset, and then what are the dimensions of learning that are taking place throughout the curriculum, so we know that what the standards are and how we can align our curriculum to those standards and what research states and best practice. So we spent a lot of time understanding this before we could start looking at resources and piloting resources. Because we don't want to pilot a resource that's not aligned. We don't want to pilot a resource that does not have the arc of inquiry connected to it, disciplinary literacy connected to it. So we wanted to make sure all of those things were connected before we started looking at resources. So we started all of our trainings with this kind of graphic, just having an understanding of where you fit as a teacher. Are you in the novice, the experienced, the veteran level of your years of experience? But then where are you in your knowledge base of the C3 framework and how it aligns to the work that we're doing as a school district? This gave us a really good idea of how to differentiate our trainings and supports and providing kind of a level of support for all of our teachers, K-12. And then what we realized is we had a strong understanding of the content expectations. Our teachers did a lot of work, and especially our veteran teachers had a long knowledge base of those expectations. We had less knowledge base of the C3 framework, and what happened in 2019, the state of Michigan kind of really took those standards and took the C3 framework, which is developed for school districts, kind of combined them together and came up with the Michigan K-12 standards for social studies. So we really dove into taking a look at the standards, the C3 framework, which is that college, career, and civic life, and how is that connected together to make those social studies standards so teachers know exactly where to find those standards, accessing them through the data hub that has been provided, which is right here, being able to see the K2 band, the 3-5 band, the 6-8 band, and the 9-12 band, and really aligning all of our resources. So now we know all the content resources, what is supposed to be taught per those content resources. And then what we did is took a look at all the dimensions as well. So we really dove into these dimensions, dimension 1, 2, 3, and 4, really developing a question and inquiry kind of focus. How are we applying those concepts, and then evaluating, how do we evaluate the sources, and how do we use evidence to make our claims, and then dimension 4, how do we communicate that and take informed action. So through some of these activities, we did some exploration and how to make connections and challenges. These are all the work that has been happening over the last couple of years with our teachers. And then we also wanted our teachers to know what the alignment was. What is the alignment? If you're a high school teacher, what's really taking place in kindergarten? If you're a kindergarten teacher, why does it matter that kids are learning about themselves and others as they go through the entire scope and sequence of their learning experiences here in Grosse Pointe Public Schools, all the way through high school? So once we get to this point, we knew what we're doing. We know all of our resources, our materials. We can now align it to what we're currently using. We can take a look at our curriculum resources. Is what we're using now connected to what research says? Is it connected to best practice? Is it aligned to the C3 framework? Is it aligned to these instructional shifts that the state of Michigan has guided us towards? So, are we looking at inquiry, being our primary focus of instruction when we're taking a look at some of our social studies units of study? Are we investigating, having questioning as part of our practice? What is our collaborative approach? How are we integrating content and skills? What is our disciplinary literacy? Are we integrating our social studies instruction into other content areas throughout our schooling? And then how do we help our students take informed action? How are they using social studies to really take action in their daily practices? So our next steps now that we've had all this training, we've kind of guided all this work with our committees. From January to May, we still have a couple grade levels that are still going through the training. We have one of the trainings on snow day, but the snow day happened, so we had to make that up. So that's been shifted to a February date. But from January to May, we're still going to continue to do some professional learning. Our committees are starting to now develop their curriculum. We're taking a look at what we currently have. Now we're linking it and adjusting and developing that content that's related to the C3 framework, that arc of inquiry, and those shifts in learning. And then from September to December, we're going to continue that work, but we're also going to pilot some resources. I know the middle school is actually going to start piloting some things this spring, and then we're going to look at piloting again in the fall. And then we're going to take all of that information and start developing a resource hub, somewhere where teachers can access all of the information in one space in Schoology. We've done a really nice job at the elementary of developing that. Middle school and high school has recently seen what we've done at the elementary level, and we want that. So we're looking at different ways to kind of develop a resource hub that teachers can easily access all of this information, the units of studies. And then January, February of next year, a year from now, we're going to be prepping to take information to EPLC, the board curriculum committee, this committee here, and then we'll be prepping for implementation of our new curriculum and resources. Each level has kind of developed a little timeline. I asked them to just kind of provide me kind of where their space is right now, kind of what they've done from 22, and then how we're going to move into May of 2025, where we'll do that implementation. So this is kind of some of the work that the elementary's done. We've had our public forum. They've created some committees. They've done some SWOT analysis. They've surveyed teachers and identified kind of what the area of needs are and what types of training they needed. And then we're moving into this space where we're realizing at the elementary level our curriculum is pretty good. We may want to keep our curriculum and just align it and adjust some of the units of study to be more C3 and inquiry-based focus. So we're taking a look at that right now, and then we're also looking at potentially looking at Houghton Mifflin as a resource as well. The middle school, they're looking at a Houghton Mifflin resource right now. And then I believe they're looking at another program to pilot in the fall as well. So they have another working date on March 19th. And then in this fall, we're gonna look at some release time and also through Title II professional learning work, and also some paid time in the summer to really coordinate and build our curriculum. It takes a long time. a lot of work to develop curriculum, the units of studies, to align it to best practice and research, and then develop that data hub or resource hub so teachers can access all of that information. So those are some of the things that we're doing at the middle school level, and then the high school level. Very similar kind of actions. They have kind of identified some days in February that they're going to be working with Wayne Risa, and also they're going to be working with their entire department to guide some of this work. And they're in the construction phase as well. They've also, last year, you may remember this, we had some approval of some econ books. We had some approval of some other AP books that were put forward through the College Board as recommended resources and materials. So they're a little bit ahead of the game because of the force of some of the AP work that was required at the state level. So we're doing a lot of really good work in social studies. I wanted to present just kind of an overview because part of the questions that I've had before is when we get to the end result, we don't see how things were developed, how actions were taken throughout. We just get a resource and we're asked to kind of be able to approve it. But what I wanted to do today is to show that work that has been taking place across our school district at all of our levels over the last couple of years, and why it takes so long to come to an end completion of a review process. Any questions? I know I just kind of threw it all at you, but this was really just a high-level overview of some of the work that's been taking place.
Well, I was just gonna comment on the 2019, the Michigan state standards, content standards. I remember that being in the news a lot. It was very contentious. There was a lot of, disagreement on the committee with people that were kind of looking at those standards. And do you have any information from Lansing, and if there's any discussion about when they might change, and would that affect what resources we're purchasing or what we're choosing to teach if they change those content standards?
I'm not anticipating the content standards changing. I think Michigan did something differently than some other states. Other states kind of adopted an entire new practice. What Michigan did is they took the content standards that were developed already. They took a look at the C3 framework rather than developing an entire new process. They took that C3 framework and embedded it into the current content standards that we've been using since I think 2007, and then developed what you see here, which is the Michigan K-12 standards for social studies. So they really took that arc of inquiry, that disciplinary literacy requirements, and kind of embedded it into that C3 framework and embedded it into what we were already doing. So I think in Michigan there was a lot of conversation back around 2013, 14, 15 of what we were going to do as a state. And I think they came through a consensus building and compromise. They came up with taking what we had, the old, developing and identifying those C3 frameworks into those standards to develop the social studies standards that we see today. I haven't heard any comments or conversations about any of that being adjusted. And our state assessments are aligned to this. So right now, the other piece to this, there's not a ton of resources out there for social studies. You look for math resources, all kinds of things out there for math. Social studies, there's not a ton of publishers out there that have identified really good resources. So that's why at the elementary level, our teachers are looking at what we currently have, and they feel that we have some good things already in place that were teacher created or created through old resources that we've had, and we're aligning them now a little bit more closely, working with the consultants at Wayne Risa and MISD to make it even better. What other questions?
Going.
I like that they're using teacher generated and aligning that.
I agree.
So we're gonna move on to 3.2, which is the dual enrollment presentation. I know this has generated quite a lot of discussion. I know outside of the meetings, I'm hearing about this all the time from people, so.
Yeah, so at our last meeting, I know it was a while ago, there were just questions that came up. So I took some notes of those questions, and I kind of wanted to just share some of the answers to those questions, and maybe when we do our brainstorming activity after this, maybe that could be a time frame when we determine, how important dual enrollment is, which it is, but how important it is to maybe expand some opportunities, and do we want to do more of a study on that? But that would be part of our activity that we do today. But some of the questions that came up, and I just kind of jotted some things down, really what is dual enrollment? That is where we allow high school students, 9th grade to 12th grade, to be able to access post-secondary credits through a post-secondary institute. So they can take classes at Macomb or Oakland or Wayne, any school in Michigan. They can take a course and to get credit for that course. But they have to meet some eligibility requirements. So they have to have specific grade level. They have to be able to pass some of the entrance exams. So our PSAT, SAT, they look at those scores the colleges do to see if a child could enter some of those classes. And also, they have to be accepted by that post-secondary institute. So if you're taking a math course, that might not be offered here because you want to extend your learning in some math, or there's a conflict in their schedule for one reason or another, and they want to take a course, they can get a dual enrollment option to be able to take a course for that. Currently, we have 33 total students in our district that are signed up for dual enrollment, approximately 61 courses. So we have some kids that are taking more than one dual enrollment course. We have other kids that are taking less than that, just one. But 31 total kids or 33, total kids that are signed up right now. Sometimes they'll take a course because it doesn't fit in their schedule. Sometimes they'll take a course because it doesn't, we don't offer it, so they'll want to take that course. And a lot of times kids want to take it because they get a college credit for it. So they'll be able to, move forward when they go to college and be able to already have some credits obtained, for them. Some students want to take a degree-related course that might not be a math degree or an English degree. So some students, might want to take a course that they get access to at post-secondary, and they don't have to meet the college requirements, the assessment requirements, because that course isn't specific to math or isn't specific to language arts or ELA. And if the college institute allows them to come in, we're allowing students to be able to access those courses too. So there's all kinds of things you can see in our board policy, all the information that's in there. Some of the other pieces that I know that was asked, how many dual enrollment classes are due to conflict in schedule for low enrollment? Most of those classes are taken because kids want the college credit, for the most part. We do not have an avenue where counselors have to provide us in central office the reason why the students are taking dual enrollment. That's something I'm new to this role over the last 4 months. This was my first semester of understanding dual enrollment. That's something I'm going to ask in the future because I'm interested. I want to know a little bit more. What is the reason? Was it a schedule conflict? So our form stack that we currently have to access information, I'll probably change that question moving forward for next year, just so I have even better information if a kid chooses to take a dual enrollment course. How many dual enrollment classes are due to conflict in schedule or low enrollment? Some are due to low enrollment. Sometimes we have low enrollment in a class here, but a student really wants to take something. EMT is an example of that. We didn't have enough students to take that course, but we are able to offer that through dual enrollment. We've had a sociology, a psychology class that maybe we didn't have enough students to fill that course in one of our semesters, and we have had kids take a dual enrollment for that. Also business, this year we had a situation where we didn't have a teacher to teach the course, so some kids shifted into a dual enrollment situation, or a Michigan virtual course. So we do have Michigan virtual, which is online learning also. That is a credit specific to receiving from Michigan virtual that would be specific to a Grosse Pointe credit, not necessarily getting college credit, but we also have Michigan virtual within our school district. Michigan virtual, we have approximately 137 students that are taking Michigan virtual classes.
Sorry, how many?
137 total students signed up for a Michigan virtual class. And there's about 222 classes that are being, kids can access the Michigan virtual right now.
Do we know how much, of the 137, how many classes they're taking?
It depends. Some of them are just taking one, some are two. We do have some students that are taking multiple courses. I know we have a student that's out of the state for medical reasons, and they're actually taking a Michigan virtual, whole schedule. We have a couple sports kids that have been out because they have, they're a hockey player or a swimmer that is going to, train elsewhere. So, they're still our students and able to take some Michigan virtual classes in that kind of a format. So we have a lot of that. I don't have it broken down that specifically, but we do offer that as an option. Michigan Virtual is also used as part of our credit recovery in the summertime. So through our summer points, if a student did not pass a course, they are able to take a Michigan Virtual course to get access to that, and then they have a mentor during that time frame as well. I have found that just in my short time of doing some of this work, the Michigan Virtual courses have greatly improved from the last few years. The teachers have been identified, and they're stronger teachers. The program is really building something, I think, and they're really connecting really well with school districts and colleges and doing a link between that. So I've been really pleased with the partnership that we've had with Michigan Virtual this year, just getting to know them and identifying kind of how our students are accessing those resources. And it's been helpful for kids too, especially if there's something we don't offer. One of the sometimes challenges we have is, we have two high schools that are great, and sometimes we have lower enrollment in those schools than some other high schools that might be able to offer something. So if we can't offer something, Michigan Virtual gives us that opportunity to be able to do so.
Do you have any numbers on that 137? Is that 137 for this current school year, like 23-24?
This
And what if they took something during the summer? Where would that fall if they happen to register for Michigan Virtual?
I would have to pull my summer points data. I can get that for all of you, but that's something totally different than during the school year. During the school year, it's really a schedule conflict, or a lot of times it's something that we might not offer, and the student wants to take that class. But most of the time, it's schedule conflict of why students are taking the Michigan Virtual classes.
So if a student takes a dual enrollment class, who pays for that class?
So we pay for the dual enrollment class, but it's from their FTE allowance. There's a formula that's developed at the state of Michigan, and whatever the FTE is that the student would receive to be in that class here in our school, we would pay the institute that amount, and then the parent pays the remaining fee.
So if they have a 7-class schedule, it'd be 1/7 of.
Correct.
And they took it for the full year, it'd be 1/7 of their FTE.
Correct. And then if the institute's credit cost is more than what the FTE, that 1/7 of that FTE is that our school district is able to accept and pay, then the parents have to pay the additional amount.
Okay, and is it the same for Michigan Virtual?
It is. Michigan Virtual is a little bit different because all of those courses are within the amount, so we usually are able to pay the full dollar amount.
Right, but the same
But
formula.
the same formula.
Okay,
And then the difference with that as well is if a student doesn't pass a Michigan Virtual class, then the parents have to reimburse us for those fees, and they'll have to pay that. The parents pay the Michigan Virtual class after that.
is that the same on the dual enrollment?
I'd have to check board policy. I believe it is.
Could we get, I mean, obviously you've got a lot of things to do, but at some point, if you could just get the numbers to us that kids using the Michigan Virtual for credit recovery, I think would be helpful. And when they're using it for credit recovery, the family's paying the whole sum, or we're still paying part of that?
You gave us those numbers at the end of last summer.
Yeah, we gave
It
the
was
numbers at the
grant
end of that
money
summer.
mostly.
Yeah, it was grant paid. It was through the Summer Points program, and it was it was part of the ESSER's $311T that actually I presented at the budget committee a little bit of information about it, but at one of the board meetings, the continuity of service plan. I didn't present the numbers, but
Right.
of students or anything like that, but that's what those dollars had paid for. We still have 11T and ESSER's 3 money for this summer already budgeted, same amount of money, so we're anticipating using that as well. After that, then if parents want credit recovery in future years, they would have to pay for it. It was just the COVID dollars that are allowing us to pay for it. In the past, when we did this, we used to have our own credit recovery program in Grosse Pointe, and then probably about 7-8 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, it shifted to St. Clair Shores. They were doing it for us. There was kind of a consortium between us and them, and some of our teachers actually went there and worked in the summertime. And then the last couple years, when we got the COVID money, we determined that we wanted to be supporting our own kids again, and not sending them to another school district. So we had those kids come back, for that credit recovery piece. So in the future, if we have to do credit recovery without COVID dollars, which it looks like that'll be the case, not this summer, but the summer after that, then parents will have to pay their fee for that Michigan virtual courses.
That cooperation with St. Clair Shores, when you say, because there's 3 school districts in St. Clair Shores, are they all 3 participating in that, or is it one district in particular?
So I wasn't involved in the process of, partnering with St. Clair Shores. Maureen Burr was at that time when she was in our school district, so I could reach out to her and ask how that worked.
I thought it was like.
I think it was, it may have been all 3, so, all together. by
But the
one.
classes were there, I thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd have to check into that.
So, in last night's finance meeting, we talked about the students who are within our district but enrolled in other school systems, and some of them are, I thought, not Berkeley, Redford Union or Berkeley or wherever they were, right? 300 some students
Right.
that are enrolled full-time virtual, right? But why would a student prefer a full-time virtual versus a Michigan virtual through Grosse Pointe? Is that because we don't offer it, or?
We don't necessarily offer a full-time virtual school. What we offer is if there's a schedule conflict, if there's a course that we don't, have within our daily practice, that a student really wants to take, they'll work with their counselors to work that out. And it's usually not, it's not a full class,
Right.
worth of classes. That's very rare that takes place. If we wanted to investigate, and actually I have it on a brainstorming list for today, a virtual opportunity for our students, and we think would be an important thing, that could be something we investigate as a school district. One of the things outside of curriculum, I'm just thinking in general, our 2 high schools, if we had a virtual school, would that draw kids back? If we want to increase enrollment, that could potentially draw kids back, but would it also siphon kids from our current programming where kids would want to go to the virtual option versus the current option, and then would our high schools be smaller than they are now? We may have the same amount of students, or maybe more students in our school district, but would those 2 buildings be smaller then? So those are all things that could be kind of accomplished through a study, and then would we want to offer that to just 9th, 10th, and 11th, 12th grade, or is that something we would want to do K-12? Because I do know that there are programs that are K-12, and those programs that you talked about they're K-12 programs, so I do know there's elementary students that are accessing a virtual school.
Well, and I'm concerned or want to better understand the cost model, like if someone's taking 2 classes or 1 class online and we're paying that virtual academy the equivalent of 1/7 of their semester, then where's the advantage if they're taking 5 classes? If we're taking their foundation allowance and turning around and handing it to someone else, where's the value in that for us?
I think right now the value is for the student. We're providing an opportunity for the student.
No, I'm not saying single classes,
but-
I'm just
right.
talking about.
But for a school district, that would do a Michigan virtual option. I would have to see the cost difference between what's paid out to Michigan Virtual versus the FTE allowance that we receive
Yeah.
from that student, and then, what's the delta on that? I don't know, I don't have that answer. And then, there's other, avenues to doing an online school too. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Michigan Virtual option.
Correct,
That's how a lot of districts do it, but some districts have created their own K-12, schooling opportunity where they have their own teachers that are coming in and doing that work, rather than just having a mentor teacher that is working through the Michigan Virtual classes.
Didn't they pursue that after COVID? Because
We did.
had
We had-
virtual school.
GP Virtual
Yeah.
School, for those that didn't want to come back to the school district, when we came back as hybrid, we had the GP Virtual option, and then when we were back face-to-face, we had that option as well.
And then they looked at even continuing on after that.
We
I
did,
think
there wasn't a lot of
discussion.
energy around wanting to continue because, at the time, the Board of Education and I think administration were in the mindset of, we're a face-to-face institute and we want kids to be back face-to-face. So, if that has shifted in thinking, that's something that we could, eventually study to see if it would make sense to do something like that.
From my perspective at least, I think we kind of threw away the 1GP virtual program a little too soon because I got really good feedback from the parents who chose it. They said that it was done very well. I know Dr. Delgado was kind of in charge of organizing that and everything. And I think there would be a lot of draw to having our own program. I think people would come back who, are going to Clarkston or Framingham or wherever the virtual options are, but they live here. I think they would absolutely come back to get the GP schools experience and get the benefit of our teachers. And some teachers might prefer online. I know it's not preferred for most people, but some people have life situations where they'd rather be teaching online. So I think it could be a win-win situation to look into it.
It may help to fill gaps in schedules too, especially with teachers that are point whatever they are.
Yeah, somebody who's
Not point, not one, right?
Right.
somebody who's half time could also fill in the other half of virtual.
Any questions or thoughts just about dual enrollment or Michigan Virtual at all,
Yeah, I think you're gonna get a lot more
moving forward?
questions on
Yeah.
the virtual option for GP.
Yeah, I think so. It's amazing how many students are accessing a virtual option that live in our.
Well, and the ones that are going outside of the district that don't have access to our district, the other things that are going on in our district, like someone may, like you said, someone may travel or do whatever and they wanna be in a different school district, but some may be local. There may even be some homeschool people who wanna take advantage of those like certain classes in Grosse Pointe, or being able to play sports and, if you're a registered student, right, you could potentially play sports and,
Right.
or choir or whatever those things are.
Right.
And portions of kids are just as good as kids because they all lit up, right?
They do, absolutely. So I would love to take a look at, a dive into that, for sure.
Just in your spare time.
Yes,
Just another thing for your plate.
on my to-do list. Hopefully that'll come back on. Alright. We good with dual enrollment? Any thoughts or
Anybody have
questions?
any other cost? What does it cost? If you looked at bringing in, not dual enrollment, the other one, what would it cost to bring in?
We would have to do a cost
Yeah.
analysis to see what the cost benefit is. Each student that comes into our district is a particular dollar amount that we receive. It's called the full-time equivalent. So we would have to see what is the cost for that student to take 7 classes for a Michigan Virtual, and then they would have to have a mentor within our school district as well if we were to do that type of model. But then we would have to do a cost analysis if we were to create our own program and have our teachers do all of the instruction with regards to a curriculum. And then we would have to build a curriculum. A virtual curriculum would look very differently than a face-to-face textbook in front of you curriculum. So there would be a cost to it for sure, but the question is, would we bring in enough students to be able to offset that cost and maybe even, have a surplus,
And the scope of classes.
We would want a scope of classes as well, graduation requirements, students 21 credits they need, we have to have all the required credits, you just had the social studies presentation. We have to have 3 social studies credits for a student to be able to graduate. They need 3 of those 21 credits. So we have to make sure we have offerings in a virtual school that they can access at least those 3 opportunities. And we would want to probably provide even more opportunities for kids, because we don't want them just to be these 3 particular courses. We want maybe a combination of courses so that they have a robust opportunity of learning. So, but I think there is an opportunity to take a look at it for sure in my spare time.
Dual enrollment. I always thought dual enrollment, we offered classes to kids when they ran out of classes to take in Grosse Pointe. But now I'm hearing they could pick a class because they want to take it there.
We don't typically allow students to take a dual enrollment class if we offer the class here. It's usually for students that are interested in something and we don't have the class available to them. I'll give an instance. We had not too long ago, someone wanted to take a fitness course that fit in with a physical therapy degree that they were going to receive, and they wanted to take this course. That we just didn't offer, so it was allowed and it fit into their schedule. It's usually 11th and 12th graders that are doing those types of things. And it's 31 kids out of our entire population, so it's not a huge amount that are doing the dual enrollment.
Do you have a max number of classes that like one kid right now is taking? Because I know you said some kids are taking more than one. Do we
Yeah,
have
I think the one is 5, 4 or 5 dual
So
enrollment.
basically going to college, and then coming to Grosse Pointe for.
Yeah. Or no, I'm sorry, that's Michigan Virtual. So that's Michigan Virtual. Yeah, the reason they're taking the 5 Michigan Virtual is because they're not here right now. They're elsewhere.
What else would you had any idea just off the top of your head?
Usually, the dual enrollment's usually 1 or 2 courses.
Right.
They don't take
Right.
a full load of dual enrollment courses.
And are all of the dual enrollment, just to be clear, are all of them college classes? They're all college
They
classes?
have to be going towards a degree. So you can't take a course. You can't take welding unless it's going towards a specific degree that welding course would go towards a particular degree or not.
Right.
So it has to be a degree-driven course.
Not necessarily a 4-year college.
No, you could go to Macomb. But it has to be going towards a degree, so an associate's degree or part of their track.
Any other questions? Dual enrollment? Going? Okay.
I feel bad that I'm doing most of the talking here today, but I just wanted, tonight seemed like more of an information kind of providing
Thank you.
meeting.
We appreciate it.
Alright, so we did a brainstorming activity. We brought some information together, I think it was October, and then we kind of synthesized some of that information in November. And I put it in a graph here, which you can see, that you've already seen this the last time we were here, but it kind of provides, all of the different things we talked about. And I color-coded it a little bit, and we're gonna do an activity just around each one of these items today. So we talked about digital citizenship, writing, world language, and in green here we talked about special rotation and like a 7 versus a 6 period day at the middle school. We talked about gifted and talented programming. We talked about advisory, and I have this pink here because advisory is actually connected to the Grosse Pointe Education Association negotiations, so that is part of that. So we can talk about it, but they can talk about it too. So it's one of those things that we could give a recommendation of our advisory, but that's really something that's driven by that group as well.
So the union wanted advisory time? Or?
I can't tell you what came out of it, but I do know that advisory is in the negotiated contract. So we could sit here and talk all day about advisory and give a recommendation, but I also know that's part of a contract as well. And I'll talk about that.
My understanding originally, when it was first put in, they were very opposed to it. There was
Yeah.
a lot of contention
Okay.
among the teachers and the teachers union
I was
about having
surprised
advisory.
It sounded like they pushed for it, and I was like, I don't like they would, like, but okay.
No, but I don't know all the details
It
of
would have
what
to
came
be a
out of that, but
negotiating topic,
correct,
okay.
correct. Adolescent health, we talked about more recess at the middle school, more alignment with 7, 8 high school, environmental focus, business focus. We talked about our electives at the high school, more transparency and consistency of course offerings we talked about AP language, CTE expansion, we talked about dual enrollment, which we talked a little bit about today. What I'd like to do at our next meeting is if Brian Stackpole's available, and he already knows that I'd be interested in him coming to do this, to do a CTE presentation, to provide some information about what CTE is, what the requirements are, the rules and all of that as well. So that's something that I'd like him to come and present. We talked about tutorial, gifted and talented, again, it's blue because I had it blue at the top. An IB program, this is the one thing I added because I felt some energy in here today about it, but I also felt I added it before we came in because I felt energy from a couple other committee meetings and just from some board conversations around this virtual piece. So I added that as a piece there in blue. PLC effectiveness. PLCs is in the same color as advisory because that, we can talk about PLC effectiveness, but I do know that is something that's part of our calendar. So we'd have to, we could say we like it, we don't like it, we think it should be this, we think it should be that. But at the same time, there's another group that would be having conversations about that as well. We talked about SEL integration. I have that in green because that's pretty much at all 3 levels, and that would be more of a study about how it integrates into our system. Grading consistency is something we talked about. Everything in white on here is already something that is going through a review process. So it's the EPLC process has a matrix of a timeline of all of our curriculum. So just like social studies we talked about today, I have a meeting with the art department in February. I'll be bringing a report in probably March to all of you about art. Math is starting a review next year. Next year is going to be pretty busy. Next year I've got math, family consumer science, PE health, adolescent health, and business are all up for review starting next year, all those items. And that doesn't count the other activities we're currently doing with counseling, library. Library is going to be up for presentation probably at the next meeting as well. Counseling will probably come in March to all of you. And then also we have the social studies, which is coming next year. So all of those curriculums are in the matrix and into a review process right now. So what I did is I kind of grouped everything in kind of a color. And all of the green was kind of more of a study. And these are pretty much committees that we could probably talk about. We can talk all day long about all of these items and what we want it to look like, but it's really important to have a committee with teachers, parents, to really drive what our current philosophy is on those things, what we think our future should be like, so we can present research-based process to the Board of Education so that you can make decisions about it, so the board can make decisions, this committee, the EPLC committee, and the board. But we can't do it all at once. I would love to be able to do everything at once. So what I'd like to do today, and unless you have a better approach or idea, is I'd like to have conversation about all of these items. So an elementary study, is that something that we think would be important for our school district? A middle school study, do we think that would be important? We just did one, but should we build upon what we did last year and have another study? Do we need to have a high school study to really take a look at the periods of the day and the electives and the offerings? How can we maybe do some hybrid learning for kids? What types of things could we talk about in a high school study? Do we want to talk about gifted and talented K-12? That would include maybe our magnet program. That would include our AP offerings and AP courses. Do we want to talk about early childhood? This wasn't something that we put on our chart, but we did talk about it a little bit in this group. So I kind of added it on here, and I do know there's energy around looking at early childhood. Do we wanna look at, IB schools? Do we wanna do an IB study, International Baccalaureate School study? Which, that might be connected to the gifted and talented piece. You know, maybe that's some, you know, two things that could go together. Do we wanna talk about grading consistency? I know we did a grading, committee, it was called Grading for Equity last year. Dan, Hartley was the one that kind of managed through that. Since then, there's been a lot of conversation still amongst our board, amongst teachers, about having grading consistency. You know, does it have to be called equity for grading for equity, or do we really just want to standardize our grading practices and take a look at our current board policy and have conversations about adjusting that? I know when we talked, that was a 3 in our group as being a high level, an area we wanted to look at. Virtual learning, dual enrollment, do we want to dive into that as a committee? CTE expansion, PLC effectiveness and advisory. These are all things that I'd like to have conversations about, but how do we identify which one of these areas we believe is the most important that we should have kind of a focus on? So I created a little bit of a decision-making activity that we could do to talk about each one of these components. And one of the things whenever we talk about making a decision on something is we want to, you know, build consensus. You know, can we live with the decision? Can we support our colleagues in the implementation? And, you know, once the decision's made, I'm not going to impede, you know, that decision. These are things that we talk about in our review process. So when we're looking at curriculum, building curriculum, looking at resources to purchase, you know, people have feelings about what they want to purchase and what they want to review. So we kind of talk about this as being, I don't know why that's a little typo there. But the activities I was thinking we could do today is we could do an activity where we look at all 10 of those items and we just talk about them. And then I created a Google form that we could use our phones and kind of just take a little survey after we have a conversation where we individually rank the ideas. We could talk about, you know, what each one of those areas would mean, what the impact, what we believe is important, and have kind of some group discussions around that. We could also talk about an activity where we look at the impact for our students. Of that list that I just showed you, that we kind of brainstormed together, what's going to have the highest impact for our students? Is doing an elementary study right now going to have the highest impact for our students? Or is taking a look at a virtual school going to have the highest impact for our students? Is an ECC focus going to have the highest impact for our students? So maybe start talking about what the impact is going to be with each one of those areas if we, you know, want to kind of move forward. And then the other piece that we need to take a look at is what is the ratio of benefit to cost? I don't know what the cost is on some of these items. It could be astronomical. It could create us needing to look at, you know, looking at a bond if we're looking at ECC and want to do something to really expand the building. Or, you know, if it's curriculum related, you know, what is the resource that we're going to purchase that's going to cost money? Is it in our budget? You know, so that cost analysis. When we talk about an IB school, you know, what if we wanted to talk about that, there would be a cost to that. And, you know, what would that cost look like? I know that's pretty heavy information, you know, to kind of look at all of that. But what I wanted to put to the group, so that I don't talk so much anymore, is how do you feel, or what do you feel, about kind of using one of these kind of protocols to have a conversation about these kind of 10 items right here? Or do we just want to, you know, we could separate into, you know, 3 or 4 groups like we did before, or we could just talk as a one, you know, big unit.
Yeah, there's not that many of us.
Right.
I'd like to do the effort impact matrix because I think the purpose of us being here is to try to make the curriculum better for our students and meet more of their needs where possible.
So the impact on students.
Yeah.
What's the impact on students?
Yeah, I don't mind your Google form, I mean, having us rank, and I don't know if we're ranking.
I can show you the Google form. It's just, what I was gonna do, after our conversation is just have you kind of rank, you know, of importance, 1 to 5. So 1 would be least important to you, 5 would be most important to you. Of the elementary study, middle school, high school, gifted and talented programming, so on and so forth. And then I also did, that's most important to you. And then the second question is just, what is the potential impact on students? So, and then we could kind of look at the results together and kind of see where we're at. And then what I would do is take this information to the new superintendent and board president and say, this is how the committee believes, or what the committee thinks after our conversations over the last, couple months. What direction would you like me to take to lead a group in which area? And maybe it's 2 areas, but that would be max. I couldn't do more than two at a time with all the other stuff going on that I'm responsible for. So that was kind of my thinking and approach, and then we could kind of narrow that focus to 1 or 2 things, present that to the superintendent and the board president, and they can make a determination. Is this the right time to look at that? Is the cost benefit not going to be something we should be looking at right now? I mean, there have been times where even curriculum review, I've had to go to a curriculum team and say, we don't have money in our budget right now to review that. So I don't want to go through an entire process of a review if at the end I'm going to tell you no because we don't have the funds for it. So I always make sure that we earmark funds before we start a review process. So I would want to make sure that we have a vision of what the funds would be to help support any of these items if there's a cost to them.
Might be interesting, just an idea for everybody to take the Google form individually and then have us discuss it and then come back and take it again and see if after we discuss everything, if our priorities have shifted at all. I don't know if that's.
Like a pre-test, post-test.
Right.
Yeah, or I was thinking perhaps we can go back to your original list and let everyone, as we go around.
Just talk
The
about
room.
each one of those items.
Well, not talk about each one, like, you tell me what 2 you think are most important and why you believe those are most important from a student benefit or a cost benefit. And then we vote after everyone's kind of given their opinion on the ones that maybe, because I don't know, I mean, I have my opinions about maybe 3 things, right? I don't know everyone else's opinion about those 3 things unless someone tells me why they think that's the most beneficial.
Sure.
I mean, we could take the survey and then take it again, but I don't even know what, I mean, I would probably vote for 3 as a 5, and the other ones I'd go, I don't know.
Right.
It could all be 2, 3, I don't know.
Well, I mean, why don't we start with elementary study and would we want to talk about each one individually first and what that would look like? I mean, maybe I could tell you what an elementary study could look like.
Sure, I mean, is it the same for all 3 or are the 3 slightly different?
They're a little bit different. So the biggest component of elementary study wouldn't be curriculum, because the curriculum is actually reviewed through the curriculum process. So, our ELA curriculum, our math curriculum, there's already committees that look at those items to make recommendations that come to the board, and we purchase the items and we teach them. The elementary study would be more focused on the bell schedule, lunch schedule, our special schedule. Do we have the right special schedule for our kids? That would be probably where an elementary study would kind of focus. Right now at the elementary level, we have 4 specials that our kids have. So we have physical education once every 4 days. We have library media class once every 4 days. We have music once every 4 days and art once every 4 days. Those of you that were here in the past know that we once had Spanish that was part of our 3rd and 4th grade curriculum. So that would be something that if that was an interest, we could talk about that through a study process as well. Do we have the right electives or specials for our kids? Some districts are moving away from some of the specials, or they're adding another, they're adding a STEM special, or they're doing a science special. I like science being integrated into the classroom more than a pullout for a special. So I mean, there's all kinds of things that districts do to try to entice and improve their elementary programming. I guess that would be what an elementary study would look like. A middle school study we just had. We took a look at the structure of 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, the course offerings that were provided, what we believed were going to be the best electives, and I know I've presented a lot to this committee on that middle school study, kind of where we fell off, and where we put the, kind of music programming and how we are providing SEL programming and what we're doing with disciplinary literacy. That was all presented to this committee a couple times. So we've already done it, but the question is, would we want to take another deeper dive? Because some of the other items that people have talked about in this room is, recess, lunch, maybe advisory. I know that would be part of a different, kind of component, but that still could be something that the middle school study would look at and make a recommendation for. And then that could also be a place where you look at your 6th period day versus a 7th period day. The cost impact to that is pretty substantial. So that would be a middle school study. Any questions on that? All right. A high school study would be a little similar to middle school. Kind of the structure of the day, the bell schedule, the lunch schedule piece. But it really would be more about the program studies and course offerings in my mind. Identifying which courses need to be maybe combined, and we're already trying to do some of that work through our EPLC work, and you saw a couple presentations in this room from the Brit Lit class and also the anatomy and physiology class that we combined. So there is some work that we're already doing, but an entire high school study could be getting a group of people together to sit down and really dive into the 6th period day, 7th period day, which we have a 7th period day. It could be even diving into the offerings with dual enrollment. It could be diving into what we're doing with Michigan Virtual and how's that working. All of those components is something that we could look at in a high school study. Gifted and talented, that would probably involve a deep dive into our data with respect to the students that have qualified for our Gifted and Talented program, the ones that have gone on to our Gifted and Talented program versus those that have not gone to our Gifted and Talented program, to see kind of where their scores are now that they're in 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grade. Did that program provide the benefit that we believe that it's providing for our kids? We did that study before, probably about 6 years ago now, 5 years ago now. So we're probably in a time frame where we want to revisit a Gifted and Talented program visit. That could include the AP courses, looking at that. The AP courses are also probably part of that high school study. If that was probably kind of combination of the two. It could be the Gifted and Talented and also along with the high school study.
Would you be able to dig up the old study on Gifted and Talented program?
I could dig up the last 2 studies on Gifted and Talented because I did them.
Oh, great. I would love to see those because I know some of the more recent research is showing that early tracking of kids into these types of programs is maybe not beneficial, and I'd love to see if our data shows that it is a benefit to kids to have them pulled out to that separate classroom in elementary school or not. I don't know.
I can give my opinion and also the research behind that even right now in a pretty quick response. The data in Gifted and Talented programming should really be done in a space where you have bigger buildings. If you're going to pull all kids, it should be something that's almost like a gravity. They call it magnet because it's pulling kids to a location. And we used to have that. We had 9 buildings and we had 4 locations, but 4 classes, but only at 2 locations. So we were pulling kids from all over the school district to go into those classes. So you weren't necessarily tracking in one building. Mm-hmm. Where now we have it at 4 buildings out of our 7 elementary schools. And really in those schools, we're not pulling kids into those classrooms from other schools. It's usually, it's developing a tracking system where the brightest kids from those schools are having a class of gifted and talented kids, and then we might have 2 other classrooms.
Mhm.
So it becomes a challenge sometimes in our smaller schools like Richard, because we might have only 2 sections of something. So now we have a magnet classroom and 1 in 4th grade, a magnet classroom and 1 3rd grade. So
And I've heard
It-
students who are in the not magnet classroom refer to themselves as like, oh, we're the dumb class.
yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that that's not kind of. I think kids just naturally kind of sense that when they see it in a smaller
The
school.
teachers aren't perpetuating it, I'm just saying that when
right.
you have such a small, building and it's just magnet or not magnet, then.
Right, and we didn't see that as much when we had the 9 buildings and the, and I think reconfiguration kind of adjusted what magnet actually ended up becoming too.
What buildings is that?
It's at Richard, Defer, Monteith, and Ferry. It's at those buildings right
But we're only offering 3rd and 4th
now. 3rd
grade.
and 4th.
So we have nowhere for those students to continue. So we have 2 years of a program and then nothing.
Correct.
And that's, I
Should go
think,
into
been
the
the
middle school
biggest.
study.
Well, they're
That's
technically
what I was
honor
gonna say.
students in middle school, like a lot of the magnet take advanced math and just get tracked with.
Well, I think we're misunderstanding though, gifted education. So I'm the product of gifted education. I was in pull-out programs. It saved my life as a young student, seriously. And in through middle school, I was in, then they eliminated it after my freshman year of high school. I had 2 children that were in gifted education programs, and I had 1 child that was brilliant and that struggled his entire school career. It is not just honors classes, so that's a very big myth about gifted education. Gifted students learn differently, they learn faster, and I think it is very much special education in a different format. It is not honors classes. My gifted child went through honors and AP classes in this district, never cracked a book. He challenged himself in all kinds of ways here, and he had lots of opportunities to do that, which was one of the reasons we came here. But it still wasn't gifted education. When he was struggling in a 5th grade class because he was bored out of his mind, a teacher tried to label him as ADD. I took him to a psychologist. Psychologist did 2 sessions with him, came out and said, Mrs. Pappas, your child's not ADD, your child's highly gifted. Have you thought of a Roper school? I said, yeah, it's $15,000 a year. I have 3 other kids. I can't get him there and, deal with my other kids. So it's not the same as honors classes. And I will tell you, he was bored for all of his honors and AP classes. As a kid who got a 5 on the AP bio test, never cracked a book. He went in college with 21 AP credits. He was a finalist, state finalist for orchestra, choir, leads in the musical, on the swim team. He was on the diving team at one point. He was reffing soccer. He was playing on the high school soccer teams, travel soccer. He did more than probably any human kid could do while doing no tutorials and all honors and AP classes. And I'm not saying that to hold him up. That child suffered and continues to, even as an adult, because he doesn't fit in traditional education. And he was my hardest child to raise. So I get this is very personal to me, and I'm not trying to be angry about it, but there's a big misconception about gifted education being honors classes. And that's not what it is. So I think if we're going to talk about gifted education, we need to discuss what is gifted education, and honors classes are not equivalent. So I would be a big fan of pursuing, we have a 2-year magnet program that goes nowhere. And just like we have special education services for students, there are students that cannot, they need extra help, they need, for whatever their issues are, and I have taught quite a few over the years, they may need special supports. Gifted students also need extra supports. And it's not that they're, it's not a tracking thing, but we are literally taking children that have the potential to be some of the greatest innovators in our world in the future, and we're holding them back. And I lived that. I was the kid that had the book, hidden in my class and was trying to read because I, didn't want to, I would finish my work and sit there with my book, hidden. I was bored out of my mind. I pulled that one child homeschooled. I homeschooled my kids here and there, a couple of them. So it's a really personal thing because when you're reading at a college level in elementary school, there's no honors class that is going to hold your interest, quite frankly. If you don't ever have to study, if you're never challenged, if you don't have a peer that you can have a conversation. But when I was in a pull-out gifted education in middle school, that group of students, and it was not in a high-performing district, we were pulled out for 2 years. All of us are teachers, engineers, surgeons at the DMC, one went to Yale, lawyers, we're all professionals. And we, in middle school, were doing Shakespeare, we were doing, high-level math, we were doing live science sorts of things, and experiments, and it saved my life, personally.
So just in the interest of time,
Argumentation and
you're
debate.
talking about a magnet program that was in middle school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was in a pull-out program, and we did all of our academics together, and that group of students, we were able to engage in Socratic circles and all sorts of inquiry-based things that were way above and beyond what was going on in even an advanced class at our level. And it really made a huge difference, psychologically, socially. We had people that we could have conversations with that were not the average middle school conversation. So for me, it's a very personal thing. I watched it with my own kids, experienced it. I really think that it is something we should look at very seriously. We've always been a high-performing district, and it was a frustration when I came here too, that there was only a magnet class on either end of the district, and we came in when my son was going into 5th grade, and I only had an option to put him at these 2 different schools, which required travel to those 2 schools. He wasn't going to be with the kids, he was in middle school, so we chose to keep him at Richard and chose to kind of keep him in, and may or may not have been a good decision, but it's limiting, So I think that is something that would make sense for our district, in my opinion. I think it would be something that would create a reason to be here, because not everybody can afford $15,000 for Roper.
So in essence of time, I just looked at the clock, I didn't realize how late it was already, I'm sorry.
Sure,
I don't
it's
know,
okay.
I talked a lot today.
Very interesting.
Well,
Very interesting.
I'm glad it was interesting. One of the things that did take place through the magnet program study, the last one, we actually made a recommendation. One of the recommendations, and there was a lot of energy in the room around it, was to have an opportunity for all of our kids at the elementary school to be able to access the magnet program, where we would take the 4 teachers that we currently had, and they would go to all 7 buildings, and students that qualified would be able to be either pulled out or push in, and we created kind of some talks about what that would look like. We were also, though, tasked with keeping the program cost neutral. Doing that, we took all the kids that were currently in the magnet program, and let's say we put them back into the classrooms, it did not reduce sections of classes, because at that time, we were at 9 buildings, and kids were coming from all over the school district, and it didn't reduce a section. So what it ended up doing is we would have ended up having 4 additional teachers that were going throughout, but we still needed just as many classrooms to house those kids. So it would be kind of a co-teaching opportunity. That had energy around it, but because it wasn't cost neutral. So we have to see what the cost impact would be to do something differently than what we're doing right now, for sure. And that could be part of the study.
I need to interrupt. I think it needs to start sooner than 3rd grade. And it needs to go straight through 12th grade. And it needs to be a vertical alignment. It needs to, one goes into the other. And the teachers need to be trained in gifted education. My own children were gifted, went through Grosse Pointe schools. That and the curriculum people were into differentiation. So my kids survived with the differentiation. My grandson is here. My daughter moved from Chicago for the school. She came back home and he is gifted. And he spent the first 3 years in tears, didn't want to go to school because he was so bored. And so it really needs to be taken seriously. We have gifted kids in the school system that are bored out of their minds. And you have an emotional mess at home.
I guess I see things differently. I don't feel that we have gifted kids that are bored on their minds at school. I'd say there may be individual students that are, but I do know that we have some success stories too.
Absolutely, always. But you have a population of students that are not really being addressed. And Grosse Pointe is a premier school district. We've always said that. I've been around 51 years, we've said that. And if we're not treating that one group of population equally, we're missing it.
Yeah, I guess I would want to do a bigger study on this because my knowledge of the differentiation that takes place in the classrooms and how we have developed our curriculum is pretty adaptive to students and their capabilities. And we have a workshop approach, we have a focus on a lot of digital content now that we've been using to really drive an understanding of where a student is. And then we can sit down and have small group instruction with kids that are just at their particular level. So if that's not taking place at certain places, I'd want to know about that so I can sit down with those teachers and have conversations with them. So I'm sorry that that's the experience that you've had, but I'd like to know more. I'd like to know more.
And I think we have to be careful at that early elementary stage because the amount of learning they are going through is so vast and they're picking up things so quickly. So I think we need to take that into consideration when we're talking about gifted or not gifted because I mean the learning is just exploding in K1 to even in 3. So I think starting too early can be detrimental. I think labels start coming out and kids start recognizing those differences, and I think we just have to walk a fine line there.
The latest research is showing that the early differentiation really stunts the social development too. That was my experience anyway.
I think looking at what he's saying, what's going on in the classrooms and the differentiation and instructional activities, there's no reason why all kids can't participate in Socratic circles and fishbowl activities and other things. It shouldn't just be reserved for certain students. It should be for everyone.
I liked your point about having the gifted program in middle school though, because honestly, if we're concerned about social problems, you've already got social problems in middle school. There's just no help in that. Might as well give them a safe space to be. Yeah. So I think it definitely warrants further study at least.
I think it warrants further study, but I also I want to see where we could get the funding for this. Lisa, you made the comment about, just like special ed kids, there should be an IEP. In some states, they put funding. In Texas, they have IEPs for students that are gifted and talented. So, our state does not. Our state does not provide any funding for gifted and talented programming. Maybe that's a step. Maybe we have to be pushing our legislators to be getting funding for that. So, those are all things that maybe through a study we can have a little bit more understanding of what's taking place.
I would like just to comment that I think the idea that the kids don't exist or that they haven't been, a lot of kids that are in regular, they may not even be in honors classes because they are so bored, they could care, like the gifted child is not always the kid that's in the honors and AP classes. The kid that is checked out during the day and is frustrated. And one of the statistics that always stuck with me was that a large portion of our high school dropouts are gifted children. They do not survive well, and they're very emotionally fragile. Kids that think very deep, they feel very deep, and so they often struggle socially. So there's a lot of difference. So I think that the teacher professional development and this idea that a gifted kid is just a kid that's getting A's and checking off the boxes in honors classes is a myth. And I've worked in populations where I have seen some really bright children, and they often manifest in behavior issues. These are the kids that are the behavior issue. They're so smart. They're they don't need to work hard or they don't care anymore because they're so frustrated and then they act out and they could be the kid that derails your class and then you find out this is a really bright kid. And I've come across a few of them over the years and my heart hurts sometimes for them, so.
And in essence of time, because we only have 5
Yeah,
minutes.
right.
So what I think we should do is identify kind of some steps for our next meeting. I don't think that we're gonna have time to go through each one of these ideas and information. And I know we always like to do an adjournment and comments. So I will talk a little bit about the rest of these items. I will share these documents with Lisa so that I think you have them already, but I'll share them with Lisa so she can send them off to all of you. When we come back, we'll talk about the rest of these items right here. I will ask Brian Stackpole to come and give a presentation on CTE. I do know that we're going to have a library presentation at the next one because library is going to EPLC on February 7th, so they'll be coming to us on February 14th, I think is our date. I get to spend Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So, is that our date, Lisa? February 14th?
14. Yeah, it's Valentine's Day.
On the calendar, if I remember correctly, it says that our meeting, it does say 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I think the time is still wrong on that, that was one of the things I wanted to bring up before we leave for today is the time of the meetings, because we have been trying to continue to stack them. So we put community engagement first because we figured that curriculum needed to budget more time, putting us as the second meeting, and we moved the time up to 5:30. But there's a couple, I got the email today about, a couple of dates in, off the top of my head, I wanna say April and May, I think, that we're gonna have to go at 6:30 because they're not available here. So I can keep you updated, when we make sure, cause I just started getting the emails today, I think Jeanne sent around that there were some conflicts with getting Barnes. So, we can come back to that conversation with the time. Does anybody here have any conflict with 5:30 or 6:30 starting at those times on Wednesdays? This worked for pretty much okay. And hopefully it'll be pretty much, I think, 5:30, but there's a couple meetings that it's gonna end up being 6:30 just because of the availability. If that works for everybody, I can let Sean know, cause he's putting that together, so I can.
Yeah, the list he sent out today is this meeting on the 13th at 5:30.
5:30, yeah, so we're 5:30 again on the 14th.
so then Lisa, I'll go through the yellow items, I'll explain all those, we'll have Brian give a presentation if he's here, if not, I'll give a less informative presentation than Brian will give. And then we'll probably maybe break off into groups and talk about each one of those items, or we'll do it in a big group. We'll do the impact on students, that's what we'll do. The second activity we talked about.
Could we do something just real quick before we break apart with this yellow? What I wanted to do is just kind of go around the room and maybe have everybody kind of like give their top 3 like things that for them is a really big issue out of this list, because that might help us kind of come back at the next meeting. And that doesn't mean we're not going to discuss everything there. I'm just saying maybe just to get a preliminary idea of where everyone in this room is kind of at on that.
I mean, I'll go quick. For me, early childhood education and virtual learning, just from the standpoint of returning children, keeping children, getting them in early, keeping them. We've seen in the studies that we're losing kids in the early grades, and virtual learning, again, the number of students who are taking classes outside of the district. Virtual learning more so than dual enrollment. I mean, dual enrollment will kind of assert itself, I think, but virtual learning, I think, is an opportunity. And the rest, I think I'd wait to hear before I pick a third. I mean, I don't really know what's the third most important to me yet.
Sounds good.
When I was prioritizing mine, I was thinking about that third protocol with the finances, and that's something, we don't have that information
Right.
about all of that. So to spend a lot of time and energy moving forward on something that can't be done anyway, I was using that as a part of how I was prioritizing things. And so that's why I was looking at grading consistency, which I do believe is something important to focus on, as well as early childhood and virtual learning, although that's one of those pieces too about the financial that would take something so much beyond us, and then the gifted and talented piece.
Let me make mine real quick too. I mean, obviously, I have a passion for the gifted and talented program, and I think it's something that I would definitely like to see explored. Early childhood is a big other one for me, because I know there's a huge market, and I think that's something that we're missing the boat. And it was what Plant Moran Crest said. Obviously, we have to expend some dollars for early childhood, but I think we'll get them back if we chose to find funds to do something more expansive in the early childhood range. And that was the market that Plant Moran Crest last year said was the growth market, was that potential was there. So that for me, I think is really important. It's hard for me to decide between all the rest, and I think the CTE expansion again is another thing that's going to cost money, but I think it also has the potential to bring dollars back. So those would be my. What's that?
So
Mary Jean?
I am focused on gifted and talented IB, that's kind of the same thing, but not. Early childhood is very important, and also grading consistency.
Okay. Marianne?
Early childhood, because I think getting a really strong foundation is very, very important, getting the kids involved. The grading, consistency is also important to me. But I'm a strong supporter of CTE education. I actually began my teaching career in Texas, working at a career and technical school. So I have that background, and I think it just offers a wonderful opportunity for school to work programs and another pathway for students if they choose not to perhaps pursue the college route, the university, and they want to go more of the careers. I think too that currently we don't have enough people employed in some of those areas. So I'm a very huge supporter of CTE.
So, I too am huge with CTE, especially when you can have a student leave high school and be able to work while they're going to school beyond high school, right? Like in any kind of medical program, nursing assistant program, respiratory, so many different options. I'd like to actually look at middle school and high school together to look, like you said, Keith, at the actual schedule, like passing time, the time of day, how much time they have to themselves for a break. So not necessarily more of a mindful kind of schedule, especially, I know high school, I'm not that familiar with middle school, and then I'd look at gifted and with the CTE, the early childhood, we need to have. I'm watching my kids try to figure out what they're going to do with their children, and it doesn't involve Grosse Pointe.
Is it because they don't live in Grosse Pointe, or are they not moving
Well,
back
one of my
here?
children decided not even to move to Grosse Pointe. Well, it did, but sold his house, and two of them are. So I think they just need to figure things out, or I don't know if it's too difficult or what's going on.
For me, definitely grading consistencies across the district is very important to me. CTE expansion, and then, while I know it comes with a lot of other potential barriers and moving issues, I think PLC effectiveness is something that when done right can have a huge impact on all students. So I'd like to pursue that.
Right, I think a high school study would be necessary before we got into things like CTE expansion, because from what I understand, there's already kind of low enrollment in the some of the CTE programs. That's why we haven't been able to offer them all the time. And I know we're looking at a declining enrollment at the high school level. So maintaining 2 high schools and then trying to add more programs, I think we need to really look at like what we're projecting out long term and not just make short term decisions on that. Grading consistency is something I've heard from a lot of staff members that regardless of what the levels are, they just want to have the same standards across the board so that it seems more fair. And then, I think early childhood is important. I know our mission statement I think says young 5s through 12, but I think we might have to reevaluate if that's actually what we want or if we want to like do an educate the whole child type of mission statement.
Get back to your question. For new parents that live in the district, whether they've gone through Grosse, how do you reach everybody?
That's a great question. So we've been talking a little bit about that. I think we almost have to go to the hospital. How do we get a report of when
And they're
kids
welcome
are
home.
right. So I mean there are some ways that we need to find out. Maybe the branding committee is part of that to really expand upon how we market our school district to new families.
Local realtors, every time a house closes, we should be,
Enrollment.
we
Right.
should
Yeah.
understand who's
Right.
moving into that house.
Your enrollment.
Right on that for sale sign?
Well, yeah, every time like housing agencies, right? I mean, I know we don't have a lot of housing agencies in Grosse Pointe necessarily, but landlords, right? The landlords in Grosse Pointe who own properties, we need to be talking to them. Who's moving into your house? Like, not to be intrusive, but if there's, can you tell us like what were the age of the kids that moved into that house? Are they school-age children? Have we already captured them? If not, where are they going? But same thing with I think
Right.
when we moved into the district 22 years ago, kind of knowing that the reason we were moving into the district was to go into the schools, and I think a lot of people who move in kind of know that, but some of the people who move in before they've had their children may not that may not be the total reason, and there's other like I know we did the back to school thing, or not the back to school thing, but the open houses a month ago, right? Something like a month ago.
Early November, right?
Yeah, and then but like last weekend was open house for all the Catholic schools in Grosse Pointe, so they were on people's front lawns and they're telling them, come here. So we need to be at least as effective in communicating that to people that we want them to move in. And again, having 2 grandkids who both went to Assumption because we didn't offer 4-year-old, right? It was the year before. They both went the year before kindergarten. I have one grandson in 1st grade and his brother's in whatever it is, pre-K at Assumption. If they would have got into Grosse Pointe, they would have been in Grosse Pointe.
Right.
And that's the thing, I don't think people realize that the enrollment starts so early.
Oh yeah, and
So you miss it, you miss that lottery and you're.
I mean that's why, when we talk about cost neutral, everything that I'm for has to be cost neutral, right? There may be some upfront cost to open an early childhood education, but it has to operate on its own funding. And it can't be feeding. It's not like a lost leader to get this kid in, so we're going to get him in 1st grade. No, it's got to make money. I mean, everyone around us seems to be doing it, right? Even last year, the churches, the one on Vernier was advertising, the one on Mac was advertising. Everyone's doing early childhood education or, adolescent care. I don't know how far back we want to go, but
Right.
And what the lines are like at Assumption.
oh yeah,
I mean, you can't get near
I picked
Assumption,
them-
and now they just opened Bonnie Kids. They took some of the teachers from Assumption.
and there's the one that's across. What's the one that's across Mac between Grosse and Is it a Montessori or something?
It is a Montessori.
By the bubble building, by the,
Where,
Giving
the
Tree?
restaurant's going in, Giving Tree,
yeah,
They have closed and then I guess they reopened.
so.
I mean, I come down that street, if you come across
Yeah.
that street at 3:30, 4 o'clock, it's all Grosse Pointe people picking up their kids.
So
Going to
when
Grosse
Chick-fil-A
Pointe.
opens.
Yeah, then they move to.
I mean, we have it, we just
Yeah.
have to expand.
Oh, yeah,
We do,
no.
How do-
right,
you know-
my one daughter had no clue. I'm
But
thinking,
what's the
"You
waiting
went to
list gonna be
school."
this year, do you think?
We typically, our waiting list is usually about 20 to 30 kids,
Yeah, I
You
think
know,
some
on
people
the waiting
don't apply, they just don't think they can get in.
potentially. I think if we expand, we put it in a different location, maybe we do something. One of the things that we said that after the last ECC review was we were going to relook at our wait list, interest surveys, and the need to potentially expand, and then even look at Trombley as a bond. I mean, that was right in the recommendation at the end of the review. And that was, 3 years ago? 3-4 years ago, so maybe it is time to get that data to review.
Yeah, I think we got some of it at the meeting yesterday about
So-
who we're losing, right?
The other piece that we're going to find out hopefully in February is what's going to happen at the state level with funding for early childhood as well.
They go
So
unified.
if we have mandated 4-year-old, preschool in all of our districts, that's going to change the landscape of a lot of things.
Was is it mandated or they pay for it?
No, we would get funding from the state of
Right,
Michigan.
right. I mean,
Right.
people don't have to send their kids.
Correct.
Fourth
It's,
grade.
they pay for it.
They pay for
Right.
Yeah.
We'd be mandated to have the program.
That would go a long way to opening up traveling.
Which right now,
Or every school. Every
Right.
school's gonna have it.
but right now we don't have a mandated requirement to provide 4-year-old
Right.
school.
I know that, I just know that, I was at an unrelated conference 2 years ago in Grand Rapids, and I had 3 random conversations at this conference in the middle of the summer for people that had chosen to go, had looked at Grosse Pointe, and sorry, I have a cramp in my leg, had chosen Troy for their early childhood center, which, I've driven by it, I've never been inside, but I've seen the pictures. And they have this big dome with like gross motor area so kids can ride their tricycles and all these really cool things, especially Michigan, our weather. So I'm just thinking, like, if we had this, and like 3 random conversations that they chose Troy because of their early childhood. So that was like 3 families that looked at our district, and it was just bizarre how the conversations happened. They were very organic, like I wasn't going around asking people, what school district do you go to?
That building's amazing.
And it was interesting.
It's amazing. I've been in it, and I've had meetings in there, and it's a huge area of space where kids can just roam freely, and then they go into their area for their
They can act
class.
their age.
They can. It's just it's made to be a preschool. And they built it specifically for preschool students.
And that's public school, right?
So, yeah, I mean, it's a tuition-based program. I mean, parents pay to go there.
But I know Lance Cruz has an early childhood
Early
program.
Birdie Center. My kids went there.
Okay. So that was a tuition based as well, right?
It was meant for preschool. Little Turtles in Chippewa Valley. My kids went there too.
Okay.
Little turtles.
Yeah. So
So
I
those
mean,
would be great experiences to come in and, think about what we could do, because I'm kind of that build it and they will come,
Yeah.
kind of person. Because I really believe that if we built something like that here, they would come.
I think so.
If you give them state funded 4-year-old,
They would really come.
they're gonna,
that's going to change all those programs.
yeah,
Which would be amazing if we had there.
and they're gonna make that decision, you think, before June?
I don't know if it's going to be mandated that districts move into it, but I do think that there's energy around it. I don't know if
Say
it'll
something.
they're going to say something like a timeline of when it's going to be funded.
But it will be funded, it won't be an unfunded mandate?
Correct.
And that would be a game
The thought
changer.
is full day
I don't have any
Yeah.
detail. The legislation is still in legislation.
Right.
The governor is really trying to push it up.
That would be a game changer.
It would.
All right, well, let's, I guess, move on to this. So we've got a lot to think about and chew on, and anybody with their selections on your list if you have any digging or information to bring the next meeting on those priorities that you have looked at. Like, maybe we can toss around some more ideas next time on that. But back to the agenda, moving forward. So we have a new business with the future meeting dates and times, which I already kind of jumped ahead and talked about. So if anybody does have any, I'll send out an email with those dates and times for the two that are gonna be 6:30, so you guys have them, and so if anyone has any conflicts between them, we're pretty much just looking here to June, and we'll probably, I think we'll take July off probably, is my guess.
I probably will be on
Yeah, right, cause that says your turn to take
I work out July,
vacation.
but there's 2 weeks I already know I'm gonna be gone in July.
So we're just gonna make you come in virtually, just, just messing with you.
Send my AI.
Yeah, right? Have a little Keith robot here running the meeting, okay. So I'll let everybody know about that. Grading, so we can move into these and maybe postpone the meat of this discussion for next time.
I have an activity for it, and it's gonna take a little bit, so yeah,
Okay,
I would like to do that.
I'm grading.
the grading. So can you give us a short little explanation of those
Yeah.
2 bullet points so we know
So
what
the
we're.
2 bullet points on there, the one is, we have 2 policies. Well, we have lots of policies on grading, but the 2 policies that have Lisa brought to my attention that she wanted brought up today was the one policy that students that receive a grade below 50% are put into the grade book as 50%. A student can't get lower than a 50% on a test or an assignment or an activity. So if a kid gets a 0 on something, before we enter all the grades into our system, teachers go back into the system and make that 50%. So any 0 would become a 50%.
That's a proposed change, right, not the current policy?
That is the current policy.
In all schools?
The
Yes,
policy
there's-
is just the end of the semester or every grade?
All grades.
When did that,
Okay.
every
Oh,
assignment,
that-
when did that,
I don't know.
because I know,
It was different between North and South, but I think
Well, that's the district
final
policy.
grade had to be nothing less than a 50%.
that's what I
Right.
had,
Yeah,
the
semester,
final grade, the quarter grade, nothing
quarter,
less.
Nothing less than a 50%.
But not the individual assignments.
Well, when you're generating your grades in your grade book, that are, our teachers do it into the Schoology, they have to go back in to make sure any of the grades are identified as a 50%.
the ones that report out.
The
not
ones that
not
report
the
out.
daily or, right.
Yeah,
correct.
any grade that's reported out.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So
That's used to make a cumulative grade at the end of the quarter or
And that's-
semester.
treated the same whether it's an assignment grade, a homework grade, a project grade, a test grade, quiz grade,
Grades.
any grade.
Any grade that's being reported out.
Because that's interesting because when this policy rolled out and became kind of a thing, probably, I mean, 8 years ago maybe, when they started rolling it out, I've never worked in a district that did all the grades. They chose, maybe it was a test grade or they chose only homework grades, but it was never in any place I've worked been, and we were mandated to like a 0, it had to be when the semester came, we had to grade up to 50%, but it was only to one category of grades. So, and I can't remember off the top which was which, but, one district did it just homework. But test grades, if they were 0s, they were 0s.
I have more questions about it too, but.
Yeah,
So-
I have a list of pros and cons of why it's done one way versus another. And I can share that. That's one of the activities we're going to do too.
I don't know if you can get this data point, maybe you can, maybe one of your data people can. But for someone who received a 50 in the first semester, how many of them received a passing grade for the year? If that's if you could figure that out.
It is possible.
It is very.
No, it's possible, I know it's possible, but what's the percentage that,
Even at the semester, it's possible.
It's interesting.
but these are semester,
Quarter. You change, at the quarter, you'll change it to 50%.
at the grade, right, okay, 4 times a year, okay.
Well, it's interesting, when they first rolled it out, it didn't really impact as much as it did after the word got out, and then what was the result, every place I've ever worked, was that the students knew they could wait till the end of the quarter or the semester, get the 50%, and then they only had to turn in one assignment or they knew that if they turned in one assignment or two, they were passing. And so they went from straight failing to passing, and then you have a student that came to class every day, worked really hard, might have struggled, and ends up with a high D plus or C minus, and now this kid that didn't turn in anything is now walking in with a passing grade. So that's what the reality of what I saw, but we can talk more about that
That's
next
because you
time.
couple in the 20% of the semester exam.
Well,
Right.
that's the one piece, and the other piece that Lisa asked me, and this has been a couple parents have reached out about this, is the fact that each quarter of a semester is worth 40% of their grade. So quarter one is 40%, quarter two is 40%, and then 20% is based off of their final exam. So that's another item that we can discuss at a future meeting.
And that would be good homework for the next round around if anybody wants to take it. I mean, I'm gonna do some digging when I have a minute to see what our peer districts are doing in terms of weighting exams, what other high schools, because it's a high school thing, looking at if, what other districts around the country are doing. Is this helping or hurting? Are we really keeping up with the packs? Because I know one of the issues, I'll just throw it out, when my own kids were going through, that seemed a
Can I
little
interject?
skewed.
I'm sorry, I have to go pick up my
Oh,
kid.
yep, no, you're good. Well, I was
Okay.
just, the 20% of the grade was, their grades are listed as a separate grade on the report card, and I think that's, not all districts do that, so I think that put a different, an extra layer. Thank you for saying.
Sorry,
No, you're good.
I don't
Kids
want to
go
left at
first.
soccer practice.
Right, and so, that might be some good digging if people wanna, take in and kind of see what other high schools are doing. Is this disturbing our kids, or?
I know
Generally,
probably
high
about,
schools at tied into attendance, and,
I've heard some do,
right,
but really that probably isn't the best approach.
for seniors.
Oh, for seniors.
yeah, I know we
Right.
introduced
I mean, grades are
the
supposed to
grading
provide
in Grosse
for
maybe 15 years
their
ago,
ability
and it was
against the
rejected. It was 50,
So,
50%.
Right. But
It was
seniors that
rejected.
maybe are in high school because they're out.
because they already know no, I think that's something that we can look at.
So we definitely have a lot to dig into for the next meeting, most definitely. And, so the next meeting will be February 14th at 5:30, not 5 o'clock, right now it's listed as 5. Here at Barnes. And with that, we can move into public comments.
Yeah.
Unless, you know what, I should have given everybody, no, we've got committee member comments, I'm not following my agenda too closely. Okay, any public comments?
It's me. Hello. For once,
Welcome.
we get to hear from you. I'm Glenn Hipple, resident of Harvard Woods, past employee of the district, former member of this esteemed committee, and currently the academic director and team coordinator for Pointers for Academic Excellence, which is a local organization committed to supporting the needs and requests of the Grosse Pointe Public School System. First of all, I wanted to personally congratulate our elementary staff, especially the teachers at Richard, Defer, and Mira. They've been recognized for outstanding teaching quality in Michigan by Niche. Having any one of our elementary schools singled out for a top 10 staff is a noteworthy accomplishment. East Grand Rapids has 2. Grosse Pointe has the top 3. Niche identified 14 important traits that great elementary teachers possess. Here are 5 qualities from that list that I believe require constant reflection by our staff. Elementary teachers are deeply engaged. They're active listeners. They're lifelong learners. They're sensitive to bias, and they're multidisciplinary. As a former Mayor staff member, I always felt like I was surrounded by deeply engaged colleagues. I'm glad that Niche agrees. Thank you to all of our teachers for your wisdom and for showing that those who stay will be champions, as Bo Schembechler once said. It has been an honor and privilege to serve on this committee during the past year. Thank you for helping me get back on my feet as an educational leader. I enjoyed all of the conversations I had with my former colleagues, helping to recall our institutional memories while pondering the future. I'm excited for the future of Grosse Pointe under Dr. Tuttle's leadership. Now that I'm professionally consulting regarding the district, I felt it would be best to step away from the committee as a voting member. I will continue to attend meetings and be available should anyone request my opinion or assistance. I'm a text or email away. Many Grosse Pointers are already aware of my teaching and learning skills, particularly the coaching I provide in standardized testing, post-secondary planning, and music education. I wish every member of the board, the committee, and this district well. I look forward to working with you in the upcoming year, and I encourage every one of you to someday make a speech in front of the person who has coached you public speaking for your entire career. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mom.
Any other public comment? All right, with that, we'll move on to committee member comments. So, probably talked out. Terry, you want to start?
I'm good, thank you everyone for coming, thank you Keith for all the great information, look forward to our next meeting. I think our next meeting, and then we have one very early in March, and then we almost have like 2 months off because the other one's really late in April, so we only have 2 meetings to get through all this great work. Well, to do anything this year, I guess is the point, so, or get it in front of the board this year, so I look forward to that, thank you.
Thank you for all that information, and I'm looking forward to participating in the Impact on Students protocol to see where we go next.
Thank you, everyone. Great meeting. Thank you for all the information. I have things to catch up on. It's been a while.
Thank you for all the information.
I could listen to you present like all night long. You did such a good job. So thank you for that. And I too look forward to looking at student impact, especially student impact that doesn't cost, should not cost anything, right? And growth within of programs. Maybe reduce some other programs, grow some other ones.
Thank you for the information and sorry for keeping you so late.
Any final thoughts, Bree?
I think I said it.
You said it all. And I'm not gonna make it. Thank you again for, I mean, he spends a lot of time, we talk about a lot of stuff and he's very knowledgeable, we're lucky to have you. And so thank you for all the time you've invested in this, and I know we're gonna have a nice, great, big, robust meeting next time, so thank you again. And with that, we're adjourned. 7:30, okay, a little bit, it wasn't as late as I thought it was gonna go. 2 hours, not 3 hours. 3 hours starts getting kind of tough. Must be started 5 minutes late. So we're at 7. You're right. We did start 5 minutes late.
Less fidgeting than me. I'm fine. Good night, Valarie. See you later.
And I got a little chilly walk. I brought this to bring in here because I thought it was cool in here.
So